Welcome to the Music Ed Podcast. This is James Devine, your host, and this is episode 252, Band Repertoire Selection Tips. Be wary of doing music that's too difficult. Sometimes you just have to ease into it a little bit. I remember right after COVID, when we finally were back to meeting, my bands were terrified, and everything I put out that was a grade 1. These were students that were in their second year of playing. They had had a year off because of COVID, but they should have been able to do grade 1 things, but they were afraid of them. So we started with some grade 0.5 pieces, and even those they said were a little bit difficult. But we eased into it, and then after a while they realized, wow, these are a little bit too easy for us. We did a couple of those on the concert, and we moved to grade 1, grade 1.5, and then eventually to grade 2. Fill the folder. Just fill it up with 20, 30, 40, 50 songs. It doesn't mean that you have to do all of them. I learned this from a colleague of mine named Wayne Hoy, and he just had tons of songs in the folder. They weren't always songs that were about to be played or anything like that. Some are there that are easy, some are there that are hard, some are fun, some are just for exposure. Maybe you're going to introduce them to a song and introduce them to a theme of a song, maybe something they'll be playing later in their musical career. So they're not all for performance. Be wary of having all the same style or composer. I like to have kind of 4 categories of music. The fast pieces that are a little bit fun for the students, but they're kind of easy. For some reason, that really appeals to them. The lyrical pieces. Now, students are funny because when we look at something lyrical, I almost always hear from middle schoolers, "This is too easy." And then I'll say, okay, well, let's play it. Let's sight read. And of course, it falls apart because actually, as an ensemble, the slow lyrical pieces are harder, even if they're a grade 1 or 1.5. And so they realize it wasn't as easy as they thought. I like to have pieces that they're looking at that are a challenge or a stretch for them. And sometimes we don't even get to perform them. It depends on how much time we have as we get close to the concert. I like to have a march song, and it doesn't have to be a difficult march. Some of the old style marches were written in a difficult way. They're probably a grade 3, but there's a lot of materials available today that puts some of those marches at a grade 1 simplicity. And I like to have something that's just kind of like a unison pep band type of thing. As you're selecting repertoire, consider your educational objectives. Beginning band composers, in my experience, are much better 26 years into my career than they were when I first was starting out teaching. In fact, some include what I call a workout sheet. And what I mean by that is they'll have kind of a warm-up sheet. Maybe it has the scale or tonality that the piece is in. It has little exercises that help the students to develop the skills they need for that piece. Sometimes I create my own. And what I do with this, it actually ends up becoming very helpful because let's say that the bassoon part, which how many of us have bassoons in our middle school band? I never have had one. But let's suppose there's a bassoon melody. I'll take that melody and that becomes exercise 1 on my workout sheet. And I write it out and transpose it for all the instruments. So now if for some reason the bassoon player can't play that melody, or I don't have a bassoon player, then I have other people that I can say, okay, play exercise 1 at letter C, and you're going to be doing the solo. But everybody's learning the solo. And on those that I create my own, I also include rhythms. Any rhythm throughout the song, I have everybody play it as part of a warm-up. And as we get better on those sheets, I do less and less of it. Once we have it mastered, it doesn't make much sense to pull it out daily. But when we're first learning a piece, we might pull it out daily. And then also I'll have some exercises that have to do with the tonality of the piece. What I mean by that is if it's in concert F sharp, then we'll have a concert F sharp scale. We might have a concert F sharp scale in thirds, and that's all part of that. A big question people have sometimes is, should students be involved? In my experience, when I've tried to take a vote on a song, it ends up being a disaster. because at any given song, only about 40% of the students like it seems like, or at least when we're voting on it. Later on, a lot of them like it, or once they've gotten better on it. And so I don't really do that. I tell them there's going to be songs you like, there's going to be songs you don't like. We're going to do them all because I have 26 years experience of teaching, and I have figured out that we need to do things that are going to help us to become better players. Now, here's what I do about students who want to suggest songs to me. And sometimes they'll say, Mr. Vine, we really should do this song by whoever. And so I always jot down the website, J.W. Pepper, for them. And I say, that sounds great. Why don't you find a version on J.W. Pepper that you think would work for our band? It's not too hard, not too easy, not too difficult, not too easy. And send the link to me, and I will thoughtfully listen to it and possibly purchase it. I'm going to tell you, this happened more in the 13 years I taught high school. 90% of the students who told me, hey, we should do such and such a piece, they didn't bother going to J.W. Pepper. The 10% who did were very thoughtful about it, and I cannot think of a single time where I didn't go ahead and purchase the piece when they sent me the link, because they had thought about it, and they would give me notes on it like, hey, Mr. Vine, I found these 10, but these 2, they seem to be ones that fit our group. Which one do you think would be better? And so they did the work. They did the hard part, and they were trying to convince me about that. It was very successful. I also like to have students through either the repertoire or somehow, maybe through our warm-ups, I like to incorporate creativity and improvisation. In fact, I have a curriculum. If you want to find out about it, it's not quite ready yet, but you can be added to my list. As soon as it's ready, I can send you an email. It's called Jazz from the Start, but it's really an improv curriculum, and I use it for all of my students, concert bands, jazz bands, every group. Now, this last tip that I have for you, if possible, connect the repertoire to the curriculum. You might get with the history or social studies teacher and find out what they're studying. I know that takes time and that can be very difficult to do. I was never able to quite get to that point. However, I did often include songs that related to Black History Month. We also did Cinco de Mayo. We did songs that were related to that, and we were able to have a little couple-minute history lesson on those two things. A lot of times as teachers, when we think about incorporating history and incorporating other things into what we do, we think to ourselves, well, we already have too much we're doing. Well, you don't have to take a whole class period to talk about the history of a piece or the history, how it connects to the music. You can take 2 minutes to do that. If you haven't already, subscribe to the Music Ed podcast, and I would love it if you would go onto Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star review.
The Music Ed Podcast, where you get quick and easy tips for how to be a better band teacher.